from Vladimir Putin last Friday when he made, at least to my rendering, the most stark claim to date since this war began about what he would do if the war expands beyond and including specifically talked about these long-range missiles. Here's what he said.
Это решение будет принято. Это будет означать не что иное, как прямое участие стран НАТО, Соединенных Штатов, европейских стран в войне на Украине. Это их прямое участие. И это уже, конечно, существенным образом меняет саму суть, саму природу конфликта. Это будет означать, что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией. А если это так, то, имея в виду изменение самой сути этого конфликта, мы будем принимать соответствующие решения, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создавать.
One of the reasons why that stood out to me is because he made a similar statement in, I want to say it was December of 2021, when he was asked about the buildup of forces. And he said at that time that if the United States and NATO continued to press forward on having Ukraine join NATO, that he would take, quote, distinct military technical measures, which a lot of people in the West went, what's that? Whatever. I mean, they're just going to, it's just talk. He's not going to do anything. And then, of course, we know exactly what he meant by technical matters militarily. So he made good on that threat. This seems like a version of that to me. So first of all, I just kind of wonder what your take was when you heard him say that. And do you think he really means that they would do something beyond the borders of Ukraine if we use long-range missiles?
I don't have any doubt at all that he means this extremely seriously. He went on to say that if this happened, then in effect, countries, NATO countries that were doing this thing would be in a state of war with Russia, state of war, and the Russians would henceforth act on that basis. And this warning has to be taken in conjunction with a specific warning the Russians gave to the British a couple of months ago, when this idea of launching missiles into Russia was first floated by the then British Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron. The Russians called in the British ambassador to the ministry, the foreign ministry in Moscow, and they said to the British ambassador, and it's there on the foreign ministry's website, look, if you do this, you're participating directly in the war, and at that point, we reserve the right to strike back at you anywhere in the world where we wish. In other words, they're prepared to go against British military assets anywhere in the world. Now, as you rightly say, he made similar warnings in 2021. Everybody then said, we shouldn't take this too seriously. He's probably bluffing. He wasn't bluffing. I see no reason why we should take it as a bluff this time.
Now, you sent me something earlier this morning. You said there was an article in the Times, the London Times, which you said a couple things about that were kind of alarming to you. I wonder if you can elaborate a little.
Well, the first thing to say is that one of the things that Putin particularly focused on is that these systems, these missiles, Storm Shadows, we're talking about Storm Shadow missiles, that the Ukrainians cannot operate them. Because GPS, basically, this is going beyond what Putin said, but GPS doesn't work inside Russia. The Russians jam the missiles. So that means that the missiles can only operate through ground mapping. In other words, they have to get data from satellites that has to be uploaded into the missiles. He says that in the same statement, by the way, that you've just shown the film of. Right. And he said the Ukrainians can't. They don't have the satellites to do that. They don't have the people to upload the system, this information into the missiles. Well, the Times, the London Times, which is the newspaper which sent that article, it says exactly the same thing. It says that you have to upload data from satellites into the Storm Shadows to make this work. And the only people, the people who have to give their agreement to this are the Americans, because this works, this ground mapping thing is done with their proprietary software. So to me, it looks as if the British know perfectly well that this thing that Putin is saying is the most serious issue, that Western technicians would have to prepare these missiles, launch these missiles, that the Western technicians would thereby be directly involved in missile strikes against historic pre-2014 Russia. That is true, and the British know it, and they're going ahead regardless, and they want to involve the United States. They want to bring in the United States as well, because something that Putin did not say, the British cannot do this entirely by themselves. They need the Americans there to help them do it for them or together. So that's in the London Times. So we haven't been told in Britain that those words of Putin's about the involvement of NATO people have never been published here. No article that I've seen in any British newspaper mentions this. But the London Times tells us that Putin